say when she purchased new lipstick. Put it on my bill. Whenever I undress in the bathroom, my shower gets turned on. I was walking through a quarry. I said to the foreman, "That sure is a big rock." "Boulder," he corrected me. So I stuck out my chest and shouted, "That sure is a big rock." My parents said I can't drink coffee anymore or else they'll ground me. Who is the penguin's favorite aunt? Antarctica. I once met a pig that did karate. We called him Pork Chop. See you next time on Bet You Didn't Know. Compliments of Sigismund Consultants, Inc.
I don't know why, but those were stupid, but yeah, they were so funny. You're with us on 103.1 FM. Drink Pepsi Black for max taste, no sugar. Pepsi Black time, 18 hours.
The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you compliments of KFC. It's finger licking good. With the news, I am Ruth Wilson. Good evening. First, the highlights. The United States wants Guyana's tendering process to be reformed. In the region, there are mixed reactions among some teachers in Barbados to the reopening of schools next Monday. Antigua and Barbuda's government says the granting of amnesty to foreigners who have overstayed is not a political gimmick. Details of these and other stories, including international news from the BBC, in a moment.
After a hard day's work, a lime at the workplace will be great, and even greater and better with KFC, with a wide choice of finger-licking meals in a wide range of sizes. Could be a birthday celebration or promotion, or a lime for no reason at all. Any lime, anytime, anywhere is better and tastier with a delicious meal from any of KFC's 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence, open now from 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. KFC.
It's finger licking good.
And now for the news in detail. The United States Ambassador to Guyana, Sarah Ann Lynch, on Wednesday cited the need for reforms in several areas, including the tendering system. She made the remarks while participating in a panel discussion on opportunities for cooperation in energy, technology, education, and services that was part of the International Energy Conference, Guyana.
There's still certainly a lot of work to do to make this a great investment climate, and I think the government should really focus on the tender process and modernizing that, look at tax incentives, looking at a single window. I know there's been some talk about that, so making it easier to navigate the business climate here and setting up a business. So those are just some of my thoughts on making it more friendly.
Currently, the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board is stacked with mostly government supporters and known political activists. The chairman of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, Bob Dudley, is warning against often selecting the lowest bidder. The OGCI is made up of 12 of the world's largest oil and gas producers that account for 30% of the world's production. He told the International Energy Conference Guyana that oftentimes the quality of work is poor and the project works out more expensive.
Sometimes procurement processes have unintended consequences. Mandating transparency and tendering, which you spoke about, is a really good thing. But when always selecting the low-cost bidders is the objective, you often don't get where you want to be. You don't get the needed quality. And I have seen it when government officials are investigated for not selecting the lowest bidder. Then fear sets in. And from then on, you always get the lowest bidder, and you get poor quality most of the time. The good bidders stop participating. I don't think that's going to happen here.
Mr. Dudley also cautions against taking on the influx of consultants.
In a growth province like Guyana, you will be besieged by consultants. Some have good suggestions. Some proposals will send confusion while you evaluate multiple options and then delay the path forward. And it has slowed down many projects around the world. Good thing in Guyana, again, is I don't sense these things here, and the commitment to growth and moving fast.
Chairman of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, Bob Dudley. Vice President Bar Jagdeo says Guyana will not be pursuing an international agenda that in the end leaves developing nations like his worse off.
We're not going to get caught up with international prescriptive goals about sustainability because we've seen so many of those come and go. The Millennium Development Goals, reaching some net zero. And often I say prescriptive because although the goals are set in an international environment, often without the developing world at the table, the policies and the financial support to achieve those goals are often lacking. In fact, global policies lead to us not achieving some of the goals or work counter to achieving the goals.
He suggests that the international agenda is double-edged, citing the role of the World Trade Organization, WTO, in destroying the Caribbean banana and sugar industries.
The Millennium Development Goals were set, and then simultaneously at the WTO, the developed world started pushing for full reciprocity. There was a move to full reciprocity, pushing the world to full reciprocity. That led to the destruction of many sectors. The banana industry in the Caribbean, because it was enjoying some preferences from the European Union, got practically wiped out. The sugar sector here in Guyana saw a loss of about $40 million in one single move in terms of markets. So often the international goals are not aligned with policies practiced at a global level.
Vice President Jagdeo says now small countries like Guyana that had never historically contributed to large amounts of greenhouses and climate change are being asked to share the burden of global pollution. A joint venture between 3T Enermec and Orendwick Development Incorporated Training Center is developing what is said to be Guyana's first training facility for the local workforce to support the country's offshore oil and gas sector. The Enermec Guyana Training Center of Excellence combines in-classroom training, software and technology, and immersive simulators for high-hazard activity learning. It should become the first regional engineering construction industry training board internationally accredited training provider in Guyana. In addition, it will offer what is claimed to be the country's first OPITO-approved basic offshore safety induction and emergency training certification, along with a controlled environment for scenario-based firefighting emergency response training. Orendwick is also constructing the country's first commercial heliport as part of a wider complex incorporating the new training facility, an aviation marine polytechnic school, and a hotel or business center. You're still with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. It is 18 hours 8. We now turn to news in the region. Trinidad has been without electricity since about 12:50 p.m. today. The Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, TNTEC, in a release just before 2 p.m. stated that there was a major disturbance of electricity. It stated that the cause of the problem was still unknown. The company said engineers and other technical staff led by the general manager, Mr. Kelvin Ramsuk, are currently focused on resolving the matter as quickly as possible. TNTEC says independent power producers are restarting all their generators to begin a gradual restoration of supply to all customers. The process of restarting and restoration was expected to take approximately 2 to 3 hours. Some teachers in Barbados are not comfortable returning to school on February 21 for face-to-face learning. We get more from Emmanuel Joseph from Barbados Today.
Chief Education Officer Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw explained how that flexibility would work as she declared that the Ministry of Education values teachers and principals. Archer Bradshaw said the ministry will accommodate those teachers who do not feel comfortable returning to the classrooms on February the 21st.
We have taken into account what is being said by our unions, and we are flexible enough at this point to allow those teachers the time, that is about 1 week, to settle themselves, to return at a later date.
But newly elected president of the Barbados Union of Teachers, Rudy Lovell, expressed reservations about having some teachers start in-person teaching on February the 21st and others the following week.
Because essentially, one can say it's being delayed with the option being given to some teachers who are not comfortable to return. But on the other hand, you cannot have teachers given an option to return when they feel comfortable and still expect the schools to function efficiently.
However, President of the Barbados Secondary Teachers Union, Mary Redmond, embraced the phased return to the physical classroom and the flexible arrangements for its members who have been pushing for a delay to the recommencement of the face-to-face classes due to the spike in COVID-19 cases, particularly among those of school age.
The BSTU is satisfied with the provision of the phased return and the flexibility, phased return to face-to-face instruction and the flexibility it allows. Ignore my dog in the background. For the timing of the return to school by its members and the phased nature of the return of students.
Emmanuel Joseph for Barbados Today.
Republic Bank Limited has terminated its contentious return to work COVID-19 policy for unvaccinated workers. And it has asked the Workers' Union, the Banking, Insurance and General Workers' Union, BIGWU, to withdraw related court matters. A letter dated February 14 from the bank's Senior Manager Group and Employee Industrial Relations Department to BIGWU's Vice President, Jason Brown, pointed to the bank's decision to terminate the mandatory PCR tests for unvaccinated staff to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, which was implemented on September 6 last. The policy was terminated official last week. The Express yesterday reached out to the bank's managing director, Nigel Baptiste, via WhatsApp, who confirmed the contents of the letter sent to the union are accurate. Referring to the court matters BIGWU has filed against the bank over the now defunct policy, the Senior Manager Group and Employee Industrial Relations Department of the bank called on the union to reconsider its decision and remove the matters from the court at this time. The letter further suggested that parties engage with a view to amicably resolving the residual issues, namely the union's request to have warning notices rescinded and removed from the personnel files of those, along with the reimbursement of the funds expended by staff who would have paid for PCR tests over the life of the policy. In his response to the letter, BIGWU's Vice President Brown stated it's unfortunate such sentiments could not have prevailed prior to the effecting of a policy which translated into emotional and financial hardship for so many. Brown said about 250 employees remain unvaccinated. However, he said the union is always willing to engage in meaningful consultations and will, therefore, seek accommodation at its next scheduled negotiations meeting tomorrow to begin some preliminary discussions. We now move over to Trinidad. Relatives of a national detained at the Chaguaramas heliport are demanding answers. Andre Daniel was one of 3 nationals aboard the pirogue where a Venezuelan baby was tragically killed last Sunday. Daniel's family wants authorities to either release him or lay charges. CNC3's Otto Carrington tells us why in this report.
When 39 people boarded a vessel from Tocopito on Saturday, the 5th of February, there were 3 TNT nationals among the group of Venezuelans. It has been over 8 days since they have been held at the Chaguaramas heliport. Now the relatives of these nationals want to know their fate. Since the incident, 35 Venezuelan migrants have been repatriated to Venezuela. Speaking to CNC3 News, the mother of 32-year-old Andrea Daniel, one of the TNT nationals, says she has only been able to communicate with her son via his lawyer. Marcia Williams says there has been numerous attempts to get answers from the authorities, but without success.
If he's not being charged, why he cannot be released for whatever purpose? If they have nothing on him, if for being detained is over 48 hours and it's crossed 48 hours, so we can change. And yet still nothing is being transpired. Why is he still there? Why do they still have him?
Daniel, who is from Mova, was part of the crew on the vessel and is currently held along with the captain and another sailor on the pirogue that was illegally entering Trinidad and Tobago. His mother says he's a construction worker and admits that she's not aware of his activities on the sea. She says her son has an 8-week-old baby and they are worried.
Not comfortable at all because I don't know if he is healthy, if he's eating, what's taking place. So I am not too sure as to what is happening with him right now. I'm not getting no answers.
The incident has brought Trinidad and Tobago into the international limelight after the Coast Guard opened fire on the vessel, killing a baby and injuring his mother. Daniel is being represented by attorney Kyle Cox, and CNC3 understands he has only been interviewed by police officers about the shooting. His mother says she attempted to see her son at the Chaguaramas heliport, but was barred.
When I found out that he was there when I went, right? When I went, they tell me he's there, but I can't see him.
And the reason for that?
They have no reason. They just tell me I can't see him. I can't see him. I can't talk to him. Nothing. So I don't know.
Investigations are continuing into the matter. Otto Carrington, CNC3 News.
Antigua and Barbuda's Immigration and Foreign Affairs Minister Chet Green is hitting back at critics who deem the upcoming amnesty for immigrants to be a political ploy by his government. Green, during his budget speech presentation on Tuesday, spoke to the importance of granting amnesty to those who have been in the country for years and have been continuously contributing to its growth. Antigua Observer reports that he mentioned that far too many times families have been shortchanged due to gaps in the system. Green went on to say that with the increasing need for a larger labor force due to a rise in developmental projects, it is a no-brainer to help migrants who abide by the laws of the land. Applicants who have resided in the country for a continuous period of 4 years but who have not yet completed 7 years will be granted residency, while persons who have gone over that 7-year mark will be cleared to citizenship. The Gaston Brown-led administration on several occasions has offered amnesty to immigrants who have overstayed their prescribed time. And in 2021, the Prime Minister hinted that they would be offering an amnesty again in the new year. That news was corroborated in Cabinet a few weeks ago, with the government saying that they would even waive fees to regularize the status of indigent illegal immigrants. In considering whether an application for amnesty should be granted, the Cabinet would look at whether the applicant has any criminal convictions, his or her family ties in the country where applicable, and any other information it deems relevant to the application. The amnesty period will run from March 1 to April 30th. At 18 hours 18, we now bring you international news from the BBC.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. NATO has said there's no evidence that Russia is withdrawing troops from the border with Ukraine and warned that Moscow's readiness to use military force in pursuit of its goals had created a new normal in Europe. The NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg urged Russia to take a step back. Jonathan Beale reports.
NATO allies have expressed deep scepticism about Russia's claim to have withdrawn some of its forces from the border with Ukraine. Jens Stoltenberg said the alliance had not seen any signs of de-escalation. Rather, he said Russia had maintained a massive military force ready to attack if ordered. NATO Secretary-General described it as the most serious security crisis facing Europe since the end of the Cold War. Mr. Stoltenberg said he'd asked military planners to look at reinforcing the alliance's presence on its eastern flank.
The French President Emmanuel Macron is hosting African leaders in Paris before an expected announcement that French troops will withdraw from Mali. Mr. Macron is being joined for a working dinner by the leaders of Niger, Chad and Mauritania and several European states. Élysée officials say it's become impossible for France to continue its anti-insurgency deployment in Mali because of growing hostility from the military authorities. Landslides and flooding in the Brazilian city of Petrópolis have killed at least 71 people after a storm dumped nearly a month's worth of rain in a matter of hours. Katie Watson reports.
Pictures coming out are absolutely devastating. We're talking huge landslides that just wipe out everything in its path, cars just being swept down the street. I mean, it's still very much a kind of rescue effort at the moment, trying to find people buried in the mud. 400 firefighters are working on the ground, and you've got to remember this is there are nearly 200 separate mudslides that have happened, because of the heavy rain.
Court documents unsealed in the United States have revealed that a close ally to the Venezuelan president has been cooperating with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration for nearly a year. Alex Saab was extradited to the U.S. in October. Here's Will Leonardo.
Alex Saab has been described by American officials as a major conduit for corruption in President Nicolás Maduro's Venezuela, helping the country to circumvent US sanctions. But today's documents show that in fact he'd worked with US investigators between 2018 and 2019, providing information on bribes given to Venezuelan officials. He was made to forfeit a personal fortune of almost $10 million by becoming an informant. After failing to meet a deadline to surrender himself, however, he was charged in Miami for money laundering and arrested in Cape Verde in 2020.
World News from the BBC. 28,000 women in Saudi Arabia have applied for 30 jobs as train drivers on the high-speed railway between Mecca and Medina. Those selected will be given a year of paid training. The jobs reflect a move to open up job opportunities for Saudi women in new fields. The Foreign Minister of Qatar said he cannot be confident that funds given to the Taliban authorities in Afghanistan will not end up in the hands of terrorist groups. Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdurrahman Al Thani was speaking 6 months after the Taliban returned to power. Frank Gardner reports.
The Gulf state of Qatar has emerged as perhaps the leading conduit for relations between the Taliban government in Afghanistan and the rest of the world. Qatar currently represents US interests in Afghanistan. When asked if he could be confident that any future funds given to the Taliban would not end up in the hands of terrorist groups, Qatar's foreign minister said this was a question the world did not yet have an answer to. Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdurrahman Al Thani told an audience at Chatham House that Qatar was working flat out, along with its international partners, to persuade the Taliban to rule fairly and not to undo what he called the gains of the last 20 years.
New research into the use of tools by orangutans has revealed they instinctively use hammers for striking objects and sharp stones for cutting. When presented with a sharpened stone, 2 young males at a Norwegian zoo sliced open a silicone-wrapped box to reach the food inside. The findings suggest the ability to make and use tools may have existed in the common ancestor of humans and orangutans. The top prize at the Berlin Film Festival, The Golden Bear, has been won by the Spanish director Carla Simon's semi-autobiographical drama Alcaraz, about a family of peach farmers facing eviction. It's the 3rd major European film festival in a row to award its top prize to a woman director. BBC News.
And that's the news to the moment.
After a hard day's work, delicious comfort food is all we crave for. There at KFC, they've got you covered with a wide choice of delicious, finger-licking good meals from any of their 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence. And there are 6 drive-through locations for your convenience. Their 11 herbs and spices are sure to blow those post-work vibes away every time. It's the perfect way to end a hard day. KFC.
It's finger licking good.
To end the news, here's a recap of the highlights. The United States wants Guyana's tendering process to be reformed. In the region, there are mixed reactions among some teachers in Barbados to the reopening of schools next Monday. And Antigua and Barbuda's government says the granting of amnesty to foreigners who have overstayed is not a political gimmick. The news came to you compliments of KFC. It's finger licking good.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/dem.